Ready?
Okay. David Singer,
Here.
Butch Hawkins, present. Mayor,
Here.
Chief,
Here.
Liz Gilman.
I just got off the phone with her. She's getting on, I'm sure.
Okay. Carol Collins.
Carol is not feeling well today. She thought she would try to get on, but that she might not.
Okie doke. David Mascaratello.
He's here.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Steve
he's here.
Draculich.
Here.
Thank you, Steve. Jean Wall.
Here.
Thank you, Jean. Amy McMahon. Jen Stromston. Okay. Laura, non-voting members. Laura Phelps.
She was going to be a little bit late. She was finishing up the procurement things. I see Jen Thompson on here now.
Okay. Jen. Present.
So present.
Still present. Okay. Marla Warner.
Here.
Present. George Van Dillender. Fernando Fury.
Present.
Thank you. Chief Haig. Peter MacGyver. No. Greg Diefendorf.
Here.
You. Neil Joyce.
Present.
Roger.
Present.
You. Katrina.
Present.
Pacheco. Dennis Ross.
Here.
You. Adam. Present. Ed Jarvis.
Here.
Chris Forgy.
Not yet.
Okay. Just back to Liz Gilman. Are you on?
Hmm.
Not yet. David Mascaratello.
Amy's here.
His name is on the screen. He's muted. Oh,
Maybe.
now it's gone.
Yeah, Dave.
Amy McMahon's here.
Yeah, I got, okay, Amy, present.
Here.
Thank you. One more time for David. David Mascaratello.
No, he just joined the meeting again. He must have been having trouble.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see him there. I can see. Okay. Here's a statement. This meeting is being recorded. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chair at this time. Is there anyone else? Thank you, Don. Sure. Okay. Let me start off, folks. I know it's a quick meeting. It was a short one. We just had one last week. But we went over an awful lot of stuff. And we shifted money out of accounts and moved them into construction money to be able to try to meet our construction projection for cost. We've had several meetings and I've had to reduce our budget down several times to try to meet a basic platform. And we moved a lot of parts within the building around to achieve that. And we've reduced roof sizes and we've reduced materials and we've shifted money out of our FF&E over to our construction budget in the amount of $615,000, and we've moved $400,000 out of our reserve money, and our meeting got cut short as well because the platform was needed for another meeting last week as well. And so it was just an awful lot of information to absorb in one short meeting. And I think, when folks stepped back and sort of looked at where we are with the 12.1 million, try to meet our little over $12 million in projected costs, and the changes that we made, and some of the options that we dropped and we've moved over to alternates. I think the chief, sat back and really reflected what he wants to see out of this 12.1 million. And we're going to struggle here, and we put some stuff off to the end to try and balance it all out. And we're under time restraint. So that was the other reason for the quick meeting. We need to really release the designers full board to get going on the project, because at the other end of the deal, we have a timeline in our temporary that is going to start costing us. It already is going to cost us monthly and take away money from our budget. So we really need to get going, release them. The chief felt strongly that he wanted to present a request for some changes. So I'll turn it over to the chief to tell us what he'd like to see.
Thank you, Chairman. So this doesn't come easy for me to come forward, but I want to rest when I present it. I think everybody's going to go and have a little bit of a shock initially, but I want to be able to explain it. I also want to start off by saying that I've talked to some of the firefighters about what I'm proposing, and we all agree that this is something that we can manage. So let me tell you first what I'm proposing, and then let me tell you the background behind it. So I hope you will indulge me for a few minutes, but I think that this is a pretty important piece that could solve some concerns that we have in regards to the full building. Adam, is there any way you could bring up the overall design, specifically the apparatus for?
Sure thing. Just 1 second, Chief.
So we've been looking a lot since day one about our operations here at the fire department, and the bays that were designed by Pacheco Ross is based off of not only the current trucks that we have, but the future expansion of our fleet. And although the trucks fit, there's always been a concern from an operational standpoint of having 2 bays that are triple deep versus the other 3 that are double deep. And so if you look at the right-hand part of the apparatus bay, you have that section of apparatus bay that sticks out by several feet. That has 6 additional corners. And from a logistics standpoint, any trucks that are in the rear of that triple bay is going to take 2 trucks to move out of the way to get to it. In an emergency, that's not always the best to do. And it wasn't until a month ago that Pacheco Ross really said, well, what if we put your trailers out in an outbuilding? And now it's a great idea. But if we expand that outbuilding by a bay or 2, we can take the utility truck and the trailers and potentially the brush truck if it was big enough, and put out in the into those side trailers. What does that do for us? Well, what that does for us is that if we were to square off those bay and make them double deep, that is a significant cost savings in square footage. That significant change in square footage would then be utilized to restore certain things within the department. And one of them that's been very important to myself, my staff, and retired guys, and also the community is for the $100 and I think it was $30,000 that was mentioned. A great portion of the savings, or a part of the savings, could restore our museum. And I know that everybody's gonna, cringe a little bit about that because at the end of the day, that's not operational. Well, let me explain it. So currently, the way that we operate out of our temporary station and the way that we operated at 412 Main Street, we are operating with 5 double deep bays. This would have added 2 triple deep bays, but with some changing and some measurements that I did, yes, even if the outbuilding didn't happen, we'd be tight. We would need to make some changes down the road, but operational, when we open day one, we would be okay. And what that does is that, amongst other things, would restore the museum, but also restores other parts of the project, because the estimate that we have, and Pachico Ross can jump in here at any time, is well over $300,000 to do that. That's significant. But what does that do for us? Well, I'm going to talk specifically about the museum for a couple minutes, because we're going to hear need and not want, and I would argue that the museum, although not critical to operations, it is critical for our department. Every fire chief in the history of this department has had the honor to be the custodial of the hand pumper, the first engine ever for the city of Greenfield. I don't want to be the first fire chief that doesn't have a place for that to go. And so restoring the museum is pretty important. I want to talk a little bit about fire in this community. This community has been reshaped by fire. If you look at the major parking lots that are in our downtown area, chances are there was a large building that was destroyed by fire. Our pumping station bridge was destroyed by fire or replaced. Poitsy Tower was destroyed by fire and replaced. We have reshaped the community because of fire. If you think about Mill Street and Factory Hollow, the reason why they're called Mill Street and Factory Hollow is because there were large factories that were there, destroyed by fire. What's more important than the buildings that are destroyed by fire is the effort and the energy and the brave men and women that fought those fires and that consistently served to protect this community. And this museum is a credit to them and all the firefighters that came before me, and the ones that will come along after me. And it's really we have invaluable pieces of history, of Greenfield history, that you can't put a price tag on, that we have been custodians to for generations. And to finally have an opportunity where the fire station could be a draw for people to come see the community or the fire station, besides just, kids coming in to see the fire trucks, but have something that people can come in and see and touch and see our history is absolutely important. And if we don't address it now, it's going to be 3 times as more expensive to address it down the road. And I think it would be a challenge to fund it down the road. And so I am not asking this change and sacrificing our operations, because it may seem like that, but we can make it work, especially with that outbuilding. But this restores at least one part of the vital thing that is really, really important. And it is, I am humbled by the city council's discussion last night about trying to help the fire department out and trying to find money for the project. We still will need to restore some money into the project from the changes that we made last week, but the cost savings of this is just too much to ignore. And I know it's I've gone back and forth a lot on this, and I think it's right by the taxpayers, it's right by the fire department, and it's right by the city. I appreciate everybody's time. I would like to end it by saying none of our primary response trucks will be housed outside. We're not putting any piece of equipment outside in the cold or in the snow. All our primary equipment will be immediately available for response. This would be that we're talking is our auxiliary equipment, a pickup truck and some trailers. So I appreciate the time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Maybe it'd be a good time for Katrina or Adam, probably Katrina, to explain how we could make the changes to make it fit within the budget by knocking off that piece and maybe saving about 300,000.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee on this. As you can see with the plan that Adam has brought up on the screen, this is showing the removal or the reduction of that triple deep bay area and flattening out the bay front part so that it is essentially a rectangle, which saves on construction costs. We have restored in this plan the museum area. And one of the other important aspects of the savings that I don't know that the chief addressed or said in his talk was about having that epoxy floor back in the project so that it is part of the base bid and it is no longer an alternate. That was such an important safety issue that was discussed last week. We heard, we talked, we thought about it, and we agree as a design team that that is an important aspect and part of the project that should be in there as much as we can have it in there. The savings of square footage, and Adam, jump in there if you have the exact square footage by that reduction. I believe it was over 5,000 square feet, or it was somewhere in that. It wasn't 5,000. I'm sorry, it was 500.
We are
Something.
removing 530 square feet out of the bays, and we are adding back in approximately 360 feet in the museum.
So somewhere in the nature of 200 square foot less of the building footprint is what you are seeing on the screen now. And that 200 square foot multiplied by the value that we saw in the estimate is helping us achieve the goals of that epoxy floor and the museum. And as the chief pointed out, not sacrificing the functionality and program, looking very carefully. And I know he weighed very heavily the options here of what sacrifices may need to happen so that the bay floor can be safe and you have the museum built at a time where it makes the most sense is at a better cost for the project. If anyone else from our team, Adam or Dennis, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I will. Should you ever need to go triple deep and expand the bays out, we'll put some sleeves in there for, electrical drainage, inflow radiant, fairly simple things to do so that if someday in the future you want to expand that, you can. It'll be pretty easy.
And in addition to sleeves for future mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and etc., we're also planning with this change, if it is approved by the committee, to put a long span beam over these doors, which allows this center piece, the center post between the bay doors, to be removed entirely and have a free span opening there whenever the city may, in the next however many years, need that space. Let's say 20 years down the road, you want a little bit more space, it can be done.
Perfect. Just a question for Katrina or Dennis. Is the savings, you think we can save enough to talk about the roof at all in this piece? You think we could get there at all?
You get pretty close.
You get pretty close, but I would add that having it as the alternate still gives you the opportunity to see the true cost right now. And if it's something that is just beyond the budget, you know that it can be addressed later, and you've provided what has been requested and required.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I know others were interested to know whether we could stretch to that point.
I don't think we're quite there. We're close, but
Okay.
We will have another estimate. Like I said last week, we are still going to have another estimate in a month and a half. That's going to tell us how much closer are we to our goal. And with these changes, it will be a significant difference.
And then just regards to that, just one question from Neil, just to bring folks up to speed that might not know. On our alternate list, can you give us the date? And we would have to firm that up and declare that. In other words, we wouldn't have to declare it today, would we, Neil?
We don't have to pick the order, Butch, but we have to determine for the architect what's in the scope and what's out of the scope as soon as possible.
Okay.
I thought I heard April last week.
Right. Did you say April when you go out to bid? It has to be.
We need to have that determination before, so that our documents are properly prepared for the bid. So in March
Okay.
is when we need to have that finalized.
Okay. That would give some folks some time.
Can I just ask one question? If we eliminate the space in the bays, does it create an increased importance for the outbuilding? And at what size outbuilding are we talking about? And I don't know if that should be directed to the chief.
Where
to
did he
the
go?
Design team.
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
curious how
so-
that plays into the equation.
So that's a great question. And the short answer is that the current way that we operate, it will be tight if the outbuilding wasn't put in. The outbuilding is critical, but it doesn't mean that we are going to be in a position that changes where we are right now. It just means that we're going to be stacking equipment a little differently than I want to. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. If Adam, can you bring back up that diagram again, please?
The revised one or the original, more colorful?
Yep.
Which,
He didn't hear you.
The one that shows the trucks.
Okay.
So the way that if you look right now, we have a current future ambulance spot and we have a future tiller spot. I don't anticipate those coming for several years. It is a goal, but it is at least 2 to 5 years out. So if you take our utility truck that's in that bay and move it behind the ladder truck, you'll see that every piece of equipment that we have will fit. Not ideal. And we will need an outbuilding at some point. But this will not impact our current operations.
Right. And I hope I'm not taking too far a step to say that the metal roof is still a higher priority. If that could be said, Chief, would you agree with that?
You put me on the spot a lot today. So that's another item. It's really, it's part of a big project like this, and I get it that we have to alter stuff and because of budget and whatnot. And I get in my mindset that this is the way it has to be, and this is important and whatnot. And then somebody from the public or the committee, and that's why feedback is so important, will say, well, you know what, commercial shingles last 20 years, you're gonna have to replace part of the roof in 20 years. So I've gone back and forth on that. Yes, the metal roof is important to me. Is it more important at this point with making these changes in the outbuilding? I don't think so. I'm really on the fence either way about that. And that's something that, I'd like my firefighters to have more discussion with them on, okay, they've agreed that this is the best option for us now, but to follow up with that conversation, okay, what's your guys' priorities in it? I can tell you mine and get some feedback, because at the end of the day, when I retire in a few years down the road, the next generation is going to be having the decisions that we make now. So I want to include them in that part of that conversation.
Thank you, Chief. I think that's a great point in that you're looking to the future of what has to be done there, and that you don't necessarily have all of that feedback at this point. But I'm not looking for an answer today from the committee about this is the number one or the number two. We're not looking for that today. I think we're just looking for them to understand the what you've put forth in terms of saving the square footage so that you can get the critical elements of the floor in the museum back.
Right. And again, I really need to be clear. We are at some point down the road going to have to put some type of a garage or cover outside. That's going to have to happen down the road. And I understand that. But right now, today's world, and when we open the doors in August of 2023, we're not impacting our operations the current way that we're operating. And I think that that's important for people to really, really understand. If that was the case, I would not be here saying, hey, listen, we need to look at this. But when you're talking $300,000 in the scope of this project, it's something that can't be ignored. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about, we've been able to cut off some of the things off our list, but there are things that were cut out of this building that don't even show up on the plan or don't even show up on the alternate list. And this gets us a little bit more of the flexibility to talk about some of the items that have just been completely removed. So thank you.
For the folks that haven't been with us before, I wonder if Katrina could just go through the cost estimates that we've been dealing with and the reductions and how we've got to this point. And then maybe if Neil could explain the budget and how we've shifted all the budget to try and meet these needs on our reductions. We've gone through a few cost estimates and it's forced us to downgrade a few times here and move stuff around significantly.
Right. So what Adam is bringing up on the screen is the most recent revised estimate on the project. If you recall back at the end of last year, we had our first shot across the bow was way too high. Then we got down to 13 million. And with the reductions that you saw in the color plan that Adam had up earlier, that got us to this 12 million mark. And what you are seeing there is still significant size of site work. From the beginning of our design, when we originally had much more than 20,000 square feet, we knew we had to deal with square footage. We reorganized parts of the building, got things tighter, eliminated some of the spaces like you saw the museum, but then we're talking about putting that back in based on these numbers that you're seeing up on the screen. The site work, particularly right now, we're working with our geotechnical engineer and the city DPW, again, thanks to Marlo and his team, doing site investigation yesterday to see how much fill there would need to be, how much removal of uncontrolled fill, meaning soils that are not allowed to stay. We believe that's going to help adjust this number down as they dug, I think, 6 or 7 pits yesterday, and we've just seen some preliminary data that says the good soils are shallower than what we originally were guessing based on the first few pits, and we only had a few pits left from last year. So site work is a place where we believe there are significant improvements. And then with the building itself, looking at the square foot cost before all of the margins and adjustments that you see on the bottom. And it must be noted that the adjustments and margins that are shown on this page are significant in themselves. Looking at the sticks and bricks of the building and the site work, you see a 9.2 million number. But when you add in general conditions, requirements, bonds, permits, the permits are excluded, overhead and profit, design contingency, which will reduce a little bit as we move along, and escalation, that adds another 2.8 million to the number. So looking at all of these factors, we were looking at every square foot of the building, looking at the materials, simplified them for those of you who didn't sit in the last discussions. We simplified exterior materials, we simplified roof structures, we simplified the steel framing. There were many places where we were able to reduce and simplify and get us to these numbers. So based on those particular numbers that you're seeing in front of you, and the discussion that happened last week about the importance of the epoxy floor. Adam, if you can show the next page, I think it is where the alternates were. Looking at these additional numbers of what these relative costs are, we could see the value of a piece of the building, such as the front of those bays, versus the epoxy flooring, versus the roofing, versus the museum, versus the outbuilding. We were able to listen to the discussion last week, hear what was important, hear from the chief directly how he was working with his group of firefighters on what is important to them as a community, as part of your community, and really look at if we can save more on the building square footage at that 480 base square foot cost, we can get back some of these items in the specific bid conditions that we've got, where alternates must be picked in order. The safety of the firefighters is paramount. Having the epoxy flooring in the apparatus bays is something that can be achieved by the savings that was shown in the plan, pushing the bay back into the rectangle. But we are still planning to have the ability to add on the piece of bay. So everything that's needed for that future move is built in to the best of our ability to make it simpler. Having the museum added on in the base bid is much more feasible and efficient at the time of construction than trying to add it later, as the chief also said. You're never going to find it at the same cost 5 or 10 years down the road to add that museum on. And things would have to be ripped off the wall differently there than they would need to be done at the base. The base is a much simpler addition. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If I missed something, Dennis or Adam or Chief or Butch, in your understanding, please add back in.
The only other thing I'd like to have done now is just to have Neil explain how we got where we are in the budget, how we got from the 10.1 million to try to meet the nut here of the 12 million. And then I would be more than happy to open it up to questions from anyone. I think you should get the information and then we can question.
I'll try to keep the explanation fairly simple, Butch. We were $10.1 million. That's the number that we've been carrying for the construction budget since we set the budget initially in 2019, I think it was. At our last meeting, we infused $1 million into the project that was directed solely at construction, which brought us up to about 11.1 million. And that was from contributions from outside funding sources available to the mayor. And then in addition to that, we took the $615,000 that was budgeted for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as reduced the project contingency by $400,000. So there was an additional just over 1.1 million that was infused into the construction line, which took us to the $12.1 million number that we're currently showing. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions going forward.
David.
It was only last week, but my memory doesn't seem to be serving me as well as I would hope. Within the 12.1, did we include the floor or not?
No, we did not.
I had the same question because I thought we did, but
Thought we did too, because we took 2 votes.
Yeah.
My understanding is that we said that that needs to be in the project.
yeah.
It would be the design team's responsibility to find what gets reduced to include that. There's no extra money that was authorized for that, my understanding.
Right, if I may say it a slightly different way as well. The $12 million number that was shown in the estimate did not include the floor. So the efforts by the city to increase the budget to cover having the floor in there got us to the 12.1 million.
Yeah, but that was before this vote. Is this vote to include the floor, or did we vote last week in a vote that included the floor after you made the reductions? Last week, we voted for 12.1 million. The question is, was the floor included in that or not?
I believe so, yes. That was the intent, is to include the floor in
Last
the-
week's.
the
Hey,
12.1.
David, let me answer it this way.
Thanks.
Last week's vote was to include the floor in the project.
Yes.
End of story. 12.1 is the budget. How we get the floor there now becomes our issue. All right, but the floor now is part of the base building.
Well, I understand that, except now that we have $300,000 to think about, if the floor is in there at 12.1 and we subtract 300,000, we're at 11.8, and then we can, if we've already agreed to 12.1, we have $300,000 of things we could put back into the budget. If the
No.
floor wasn't included in the 12.1, but it was only a general vote that it was important, which I don't know how we could, because it either had to be in or it had to be out, then the floor is already included in the $300,000 savings. So then we only have the difference left to talk about as extra spending.
Except your math is not quite correct because we still have to add for the museum. So your 300 savings, you then subtract some portion of that to add to make.
No.
the museum.
Yes, I was adding back the museum. So in my mind, if the 300,000 was included last week, we subtract 300,000, we add in the museum, but we still have a difference between the 300,000 saved and the cost of the museum. So there's more we could talk about if we feel comfortable that 12.1 million is our budget. If the floor was not included and we subtract the 300,000, then it's the floor and the museum, and then that's the end of the discussion, at least unless we want to expand the 12.1 million.
David, if I recall correctly in the last meeting, as we look for potential savings throughout the process, though the monies from those savings are to go back into FF&E. That's what I recall discussing last week. So I'd imagine that's where this would be headed.
But all right, I mean, maybe other people get it more than I do. It's just that we have a $12.1 million budget. We're now going to subtract 300,000 by cutting off the fire station. What are we going to do with that 300,000? And if we're going to get ideas, do the ideas include adding the asphalt floor in, or was the asphalt floor already taken care of? So that's my simple question.
Floor was included.
Okay.
Right. But we did short, you got to remember, we shorted ourselves 400,000 out of the contingency, and we increased our budget by 2 million, which even shorted the contingency even more. And then we wiped out our FF&E to get over to that 12 million. So what Adam is saying was, part of the discussion was that savings would try to be used to repopulate those line items in the estimate.
That's fine. That's a solution.
Right.
But I just want to make sure I understand what my
Yeah.
options are as we talk about, or all of us understand what our options are. So if the floor is
Right.
included in the original 12.1, then we won't be talking about the floor anymore because it's
Floor.
already in there. So we'll be talking about other things.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
I believe what we're talking about is having reconfigured the bays so that there is some additional savings, and that additional savings is going to the museum. Am I not correct about that?
You are correct. That is the floor and the museum were restored to the project by going to the 12.1 million budget.
Yeah, but I'm saying, and now the chief has offered a way to reduce square footage a little bit. I assume of square footage that you're taking away a little more in reconfiguring the bays. And I thought he was doing that so that there would be additional money in the budget, the 12.1 or whatever it is that we have for the museum. And we are not excluding it now. It is, according to this estimate, 134,708. So am I right? That's
Yes.
Jen?
Hey, you guys know I always start to itch when we do math out loud. I can't stand it. So,
me, right?
right? I don't believe any of you, but it doesn't matter. I also believe all of you because I don't think anyone's acting in bad faith, so I'm not that worried about it. Here's what I want to know. I think last week what we did, I was taking minutes, so in a way I followed closely, but in another way I don't. I think last week we needed a motion to approve a change to the alternates list. So I'm just wondering, rather than spending a lot of time on math that none of us is following, can we just figure out procedurally what's next? I think we need to make some kind of decision to, support what the chief is proposing and change our alternates, what's contained in there, maybe the priorities again on there. And then maybe some of that also returns us to, like, I think the big answer to David Singer's question, which is like, what happens if we have more money? It's like, well, isn't that what the alternates list is about? I mean, and the FF&E thing. So I just want to know sort of where we're going with this in terms of making a decision so that we get there. And then one last thing I want to tack on, which is sort of more of a pulling back thing. I am sorry to be so ignorant about what the capital improvements planning practices of our city are, but I have only been recently blessed to be involved in such big things. So I would like to know if there's some way truly that this group or maybe the council can take up the question of future things that aren't in this project and the ability to really meaningfully promise those to the fire department through some kind of process of capital planning and budgeting. You know, things like a roof in 20 years, things like the outbuilding in 5 years. And so I don't think we can answer that all today, but that gets to sort of a bigger question of sacrifices that are being made and then sort of what are the solutions to really make those right over time and maybe not totally punt the decision, but actually start budgeting that money like in the now times. So we don't do to the future people what was done to us.
Right. Okay, I think David had a question. Muted.
On more just the statements, because I am concerned about the math. Sorry, Jen. Last week we made the votes for the 12.1. This is simple. We made the votes for the 12.1 million. It included the floor, and the transfer of the $600,000 for the FF&E. That was the transfer. He's proposing to remove the front part of the bays, which is a savings of about $300,000. So 134,000 of that is going to go towards putting the museum back into place, and that will leave $166,000 or so as a cost savings. That's pretty much it. Does that make sense? And is that correct?
The way I understand it.
So that's it. I don't know if we have to discuss it anymore. That's the bottom line. We're transferring 130 something to the museum. There's going to be a cost savings of $166,000 that we can apply to the roof or back to the FF&E or whatever we decide to do with it.
Sure. Okay, then Chief, do you want to make a motion? Is what you'd like to see?
Sure, I will make a motion that this will be the last design thing so the design team can get going.
Yes, it will.
But I make a motion
Second.
that we take away the front part of the triple bays and make it a straight shot across the bays and restore the museum.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Yes, Mayor.
I have no problem with that motion per se. What I want us all to be very cognizant of, and we have a little bit of time, is in FF&E, and why I think future savings need to be applied to FF&E as we go forward, depending on however we get it. Right now, we've got 165 in future savings. I'm very concerned about the technology piece of FF&E. I think we need to be planning and designing this building with the idea that we are not using technology from the old fire station, not the old fire station, well, in 2 years it'll be old, from the temporary, but with the idea that we are buying new. And I think we need to engage. I'm not putting Fernando on the spot here tonight, but he and I did have a brief discussion about it last week. We need to make sure that when we restore money to FF&E, what we're restoring first is for technology. So we can plan, it can be designed for, and he can begin to find what the costs on technology are going to be going forward. Because if we know anything right now, where the supply chain issues are, in many cases, are also in technology. So I'm not saying we put that 165 there tonight, but I think we need to pay particular attention to restoring FF&E.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Yes, David.
I just want to say that I think it's really important, and I thank the committee and the city council that we put our trust in the chief's ideas and plans. He's the chief. He sees what happens every day, and we have to trust his opinion. And I think it's really important to say that.
Agree.
Butch, I saw earlier hands from Councilor Jarvis as well as from Councilor Forgy, and I don't think they've been heard yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Councilor
I
Forgy
don't-
would like to speak.
Sure, I don't see them on the screen, so if somebody wants to speak, just speak up, because I can't see everybody.
I think Ed Jarvis is in line first.
Yeah, I think he is too.
I will just say procedurally, I think you need to, because mine is not towards the motion and you are discussing the motion right now. So I think I have to wait. I will wait till after the motion till you guys are done, because mine does not pertain to the motion on the floor right now being discussed.
Ditto. Ditto.
Councilor Forgy?
Can I just ask who seconded the motion? Because I'm over here doing.
Oh,
Thank you.
David M.
Jen, can you read the motion, please?
The chief motions to redesign bays and restore museum.
She's itching again.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Forgy, did you have a?
I'm not part of the motion discussion, so I will wait. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else on the motion discussion? Speak up, because I can't hear you. I can't see you all. Okay, so we're ready for a vote then. So just restate that again, Jen, so everybody knows what we're voting for.
Motion to redesign bays and restore museum.
Okay. All right. David Singer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. I vote yes. Mayor?
Yes,
Yes. Chief?
Yes.
Liz Gilman, are you on?
Yes.
Thank you. Carol Collins?
I don't think she joined us.
Okay. David M?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Gene Wall,
Yes.
Amy McMahon,
Yes.
and Jen Stromston.
Yes.
Unanimously approved your motion, Chief. Okay. Just a question. I skipped over the prior meeting minutes because I thought Peter had done them and Peter's on vacation, but we haven't received them anyway, so I'll put them off till the next meeting. I just want everybody.
Yeah, I sent them to Peter because I really would like him to be the, to look them over.
Right. He tried to do it from Florida and he couldn't get them out. He told me.
They were done and they're gonna be done, I'm doing them tonight too, but I'm gonna send them through you and Peter first to review.
Okay,
Butch, can I make a quick comment?
sure. Go ahead, Chief.
I just wanted to follow up. Thank you all for the support on this. I think it was too big of a nut to not take a look at. I just want to assure people that this isn't the decision by the fire chief. I don't operate in a budget, in a bubble. I work with a very large group of very dedicated firefighters. Several of the firefighters were brought into the discussion, as well as retired people and other people to seek guidance and suggestion on this. So I appreciate the confidence that David and the committee has in me, but I want to reassure, especially the public that's listening, that this isn't just a decision made by the fire chief. This is a bigger decision beyond. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
So I think we don't need to discuss anything further on the project cost estimates, do we? We've gone through that pretty much and nailed that down at 12.1, I believe, unless David wants to add something in that regard. Because we do have the budget update and we can talk about the budget there as well.
I think somebody should say out loud what the number is now based on that vote.
Okay.
Who's gonna, Jen, I know Jen won't do that,
Right.
but maybe Neil can do that.
Can you wrap your hands around that one, Neil?
Well, I'll do it this way. I'll do it in real time with my calculator here. Hopefully it won't kill us. We started at 12.1 million. We added 135,000 for the museum. We deducted 300,000 for the reduction in the apparatus bays, which nets us out to 11.935 million for construction. If anybody has any objections, please note them now.
Okay, so as a result of that, we have $1 million that the mayor has infused. We have 400,000 that we squeezed out of the budget. So we have $11.5 million of monies. The FF&G was going to make up the difference, but now we've reduced the cost of the project. So what would be the amount then we would be taking from FF&G at this point to achieve that budget?
We could put $180,000 back either into FF&E or to a combination of FF&E and contingency, understanding that project contingency will be how project contingency is expended will be addressed as construction progresses.
Right, but there's still money. So we have the kind consideration of the city council, and we need to let the city council know how much money we need. So if we've just reduced the taking of the FF&G, then the money we need to fill the FF&G is a number that's now smaller than 615. And the money that we need to maybe get a better contingency number, with my conversations with Neil, is probably another 100,000. So whatever that number is, it's around $500,000. So it looks like we're starting at $500,000 to achieve this $11.9 million project. We need infusion of cash from the council for at least that much money. So then the question is, how does the discussion proceed if either tonight or hopefully in the near future, because I think the council would like to do this sooner than later, of how much money we need to then add on other things, like other alternative things that now we think are important, if the council's willing to fund them now. So the conversation gets a little more complicated. But I think if the council's willing to help us, we need to have that discussion in order to give them a number that they can talk about.
Would we need, Neil, would we need a week or so for you to kind of really sit down with the designers and come up with a
Yeah, I think
succinct
that,
value?
I think that would be helpful, Butch.
Yeah. So in that case, should we have a meeting, our regular meeting is for the 27th. So how do you feel about that, David? Does that work?
Oh, yeah, sure. And I know that Councilor Forgy would like to speak to us, but I felt that if I said that, and I know there are other councilors that are watching the meeting. I watched the city council meeting last night. There was a lot of generosity of spirit there, you know, but at the end of the day, it's about the numbers. So I want to impress the council that we kind of know, you know, what our bottom line number really might be. Not necessarily now going for the moon, but but by hearing how we have this conversation today, they could also, the members of the council could also appreciate why we would achieve whatever number we reach next week, because it includes both what we need to fill back in the FF&G and some of the contingency money that we took out, which we would have to go to them for anyway, no matter what. We were just kicking that can down the road. And the other thing would be if their mindset is that we really should build the best fire station that we can within a budget that the council feels comfortable with expanding our current budget, then we have to give them a bigger number if they're willing to do that. So then we have a place. We have a placeholder number, and we go forward with the bids. Lucky the bids will come in lower, and maybe they'll be shifting. But at least we know as a committee what support we're going to get, maximizing all our numbers. Thank you.
Perfect. So go ahead, Jen.
And I just want to, this is going to sound defensive, but I don't mean it that way. I love math. I just hate math out loud. So what I'd like to just request is that if we have a little time for Neil to get ready and everything, just that if it would be possible to have things on the screen, to be able to have these numbers so that we can look at calculations on a spreadsheet together, so that it's easier for people like me who don't mind looking like an idiot and asking questions. And I think the many people trouble following it and don't necessarily want to say so. So I just think some visual aids on the calculations would be super, especially if we're going to look at some like multiple scenarios, you know, like, and give the council a sense of like, here's what we can do and here's what we prefer to do. I think this is just too complicated a thing to take lightly. And I want it to be very clear to everyone kind of visually what we're talking about.
Sure. Neil, do you think before the next meeting, you could get a spreadsheet together that I could send out to folks?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Ed.
Before we go on down another path, I'd just like to say a couple of things. I am ecstatic that the museum is back into the project. Years ago, I was one of 3 or 4 people that took the trip down to New York City to get a piece of steel from the World Trade Center. To me, that is not only Greenfield history, that is a world event. And it was very somber, and I would like that to have a very special home in the museum, because it is a very important piece of our history for the nation, not only Greenfield, to have the privilege of having a piece of steel, because not every community has that piece of steel from the World Trade Centers. So I am ecstatic that that is in there. It means a lot to me. Also, I want to caution people before the mayor and President Gilmore gets a bunch of emails from citizens. The city council said that we would find ways to help. We did not use the M word in our discussions last night because we were cautioned not to. So And we had also decided that we would set a ad hoc committee to work with the fire station building committee from the Ways and Means Committee. But I just want to caution everybody out there that we didn't mention the M word, that we said that we would find ways to help. If you read into the, in between the print. I just don't want everybody to get a bunch of emails, including the mayor and President Gilmore, because the M word was mentioned, that we had said that we would do that. We said that we would find ways to help. So I just wanted to kind of caution on that. And thank you very much for supporting the chief in the endeavor to add that museum. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Counselor Forgy?
Thank you. It's a great segue from what Councilor Jarvis just said. Yeah, we were cautioned that this was just under new business. We're not going to start throwing figures around. The best thing that happened last night at our meeting was that there was a great deal of interest on the part of the council in helping to see this project through. I think if we are going to really talk about how we can help, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is the money. Now, having said that, I also think that it's very important for the committee at this particular time to put together, I'm not going to say a wish list, but I am going to encourage that you make it plain, very clear in dollar amounts, what it is that you feel you need at this time. And I am speaking I'm speaking for myself, my past experience and everything else. But thinking about things in retrospect, this is the time for the council to rally and support this project. I think we should do so 100% knowing everything we possibly can, and then make decisions as a community on how we want to go forward with this. So in a nutshell, ask exactly what you think you need and want, and this might be the last opportunity for any of this to actually play out in the council. So I'm just going to encourage you to be heartened and take courage, and please ask for what you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor.
I want to thank Councilor Forgy and all of the councilors. I was unable, I didn't stay till the end of the meeting, and now I'm kicking myself. I wish I had. It was one of those days, and it was a very long one. So I want to thank you all for your publicly expressed support. I think that's great. And we do have Liz Gilman. I do want to remind everybody on the council, and I think they know it. I don't think I have to remind them, but the council doesn't write the financial orders.
Right.
The mayor's office does. So the wish list is important, but if at the point that we need to have that discussion, that we need to have the communication go both ways. Also, we have Liz Gilman on the line, and if anybody knows where the gold is, it's Liz. And if she's been listening to this conversation, and she may be able to enlighten us, because she has her fingers on the pulse of the budget and where we hide the money. I don't mean that literally. Sorry about that. I mean, figuratively, she knows where it might lie. So if she has some ideas, I think we should hear them.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor, but I was more, well, I can talk to that, but I was also wanting to mention why I think it's good to draw up the list of things you think you need. I think you have to wait till it comes back from bid to know where you stand.
Yeah.
Because as Councilor Forgy just said, one opportunity. So if the bids come in not where you want them, you might be asking for more than your wish list. So, honestly, I think that's the better approach. But start working on it. The mayor has to go over the capital improvement plan. And that has various funding sources, so that impacts what's available. Because we really are at our limit on borrowing authorizations. We really aren't going to go that route. So once we get through the capital improvement plan, we'll have a better idea of what do we have left in capital stabilization? What do we have left in perhaps some free cash? Can we plan something into the FY23 budget in terms of some of the FF&E or next year's capital plan? And the chief will be, I'm sure, putting in our 5-year capital plan, those future needs that have been talked about, the outbuilding, roof, but again, we're all thinking that things will come in at where they're at, and it just hasn't been, things happen. So I think it's wiser to wait till it comes back from bid, know where you stand, know what you want, and talk to the mayor, because as the mayor states, the financial orders do come from the mayor.
It's true.
Council has to totally support them and vote on them. But that's where they are generated from.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
I think what you're starting out with, making the list, is a good idea, and quantifying those needs. But then I think you have to wait till the bids come back to see, where do I stand?
Right. So next week's work is worthwhile if we.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, have Neil and us, we go over it, and that's sort of the beginning of the process, but it's really also defining it as well.
And
Yep.
I would remind people that Laura is on here now, and she did spend a good part of the day in the big meeting room going over pre-qualifications for said bids. So
We have that on the list.
yeah.
Yes, Chief.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So there's been some discussion about some citizens about fundraising activities, or if there was, hypothetically, not that there's somebody out there that would do this, but say there's an organization or somebody out there that wanted to contribute the portion of what we just allocated for the museum, say a sponsor or whatever. Could that money then be turned back in to start plugging away on the alternative list? How would that work?
Yeah. I think what you've done is the critical thing, is you need to get the design done and that out to bid. Everything else, FF&E and some of those other items on the alternative list, it can come from other sources. And fundraising could be in there. I don't know if you've given any thoughts to naming anything. And that could be a possible fundraising thought. But anyway, a lot of effort has gone into all of this, I know. So we will make things happen.
Okay. All right. Okay, so if there's no more questions about the cost estimate, about a report from the pre-qual subcommittee. I know that's a lot of activity been going on there.
I'll take that, Butch, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So yes, we advertised for and received today, I think, 68 packages from prospective subcontractors. We plan to meet on Monday morning in City Hall to distribute those packages to the reviewers and to go through the evaluation criteria in a little bit greater detail before we send the evaluators packing with their information. So that's where we stand. I think there was I think there was one category of work that we were light in terms of the number of respondents. So we'll be preparing to re-advertise that section of work. I think it was acoustic ceilings. And we will ask for additional information packages from prospective bidders.
Okay. Any questions,
to-
Neil, on that?
Or you want to add something?
Yes, actually, I wanted to thank the chief and Alex and Dan and Tara from our office for all the help with the processing of the submissions. It's going very smoothly. We should be done first thing in the morning. So thank you so much. We appreciate the help. That's it.
Thanks. Okay, any other comments or questions on that? Okay. Budget update. Neil, I know it's a few things in the budget been expended.
Yes, we did, since our last meeting, we did process another round of bills. So I am presenting on screen now the current budget update. And we are up about 70,000 from where we were at our last meeting, but still well within. I have not yet made the budget adjustments that we have spoken about. I can certainly work those in at our next meeting. But right now we're standing just at 2.57 million in expenditures and forecasting 17 million total project, which will be adjusted to 18 million and change in the future. Anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I can't see anybody, so you have to speak up. Okay.
And I think those are for invoices that were processed through, I'll say, January 5th, in that range anyway. I think we just submitted another letter, but that was not authorized, so we haven't gone through that yet.
Right. Okay. Temporary fire station updates. Anything, chief, on that? You're in.
You can all see the temporary office.
Yes.
I've got to publicly thank the firefighters that were involved with the painting and getting this project off the ground. Myself, fire prevention, the office manager, and our operations captain and lieutenant are all now set and ready to go and working out of our new offices. The majority of the work was done in-house, and I would open the doors to anybody on this committee to come see this part of this project. It's pretty impressive. So
Came out well. Did, I've taken the tour. It really came out well, given the constraints you had.
Yeah, we received estimates that were 3 times the amount of money that we allocated. So with I always do this, and I apologize. Marlo and his crew allowing Central Maintenance to come here was really the was really the thing that helped this project. The town electricians were able to replace all the lighting, electrical outlets, put in the heat, and really did a tremendous amount of work, including exit signs and stuff for materials. And if it wasn't for their work as well, this wouldn't have happened. So Marlo, behalf of the fire department, thank you very much to you and your electrical guys. Thank you.
Good. Any questions to the chief on the temporary? No? Okay. So the next meeting will be next week on the 27th. If anyone wants to see anything on the agenda, just please email. I'm more than happy to put it on. Other than that, primarily we're going to be talking about the budget information. Try to come up with, I'm sure he'll give me a schematic to send out to all of you before that, so you'll have something to review. With that, motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? David?
Aye.
Yes, Butch is aye. Mayor?
Yes, aye.
Yes, Chief, everybody's aye on that. Liz?
Yes.
David, M?
Yes, aye.
Yeah, Steve?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Jen?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Butch.
Aye, thank
everyone.
you
Oh.
very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Yep.